I've worked for 9 years now as a tour guide for one of those bullshit haunted walking tours in Flagstaff, Arizona. There are many such tours, and I hope you won't try to figure out exactly where I work based on this story. I really don't need stalkers. It's decent enough work. After sticking around so long, I get almost full-time hours and more than minimum wage, which is more than an ex-druggie high school dropout can expect in this town, really. Most nights are uneventful, aside from the occasional drunk old man shouting something inappropriate or newlywed couple making out when I'm trying to do my shtick. In all my time, I've rarely seen anything I couldn't explain. In fact, most patrons don't even see anything aside from the occasional sleight of hand that my manager encourages us to pull. But I'm not here to tell you about the typical night of spouting spurious historical facts and throwing my voice to mimic ghostly wailing, a trick I picked up from a YouTube video. You're here for the good stuff. My first tale takes place around what is now the Macmillan Bar and Kitchen. It's an old brick building by the railway that still sports a bank sign high above historical Route 66. According to the tour guide materials provided by the management of the Macmillan, a failed would-be bank robber whose name is lost to history was locked in the vault by guards awaiting a paddy wagon following a shootout that resulted in the death of one of the other officers on duty at the bank. Figuring he would be put to death for his crimes, the robber hung himself from an exposed beam using his belt before the authorities arrived. The unnamed bank robber can apparently be seen in the reflection on Macmillan's front window or hanging in the old bank vault, now used as dry storage. Some diners even report hearing a faint voice begging for spare change in the lobby. Now, personally, this story is one I have always had the most trouble telling on a tour. I can't find a damn thing about it online, even on the official Macmillan website, which is confusing. Which makes me think the whole thing is BS, designed to draw more customers into the restaurant. However, I'll never forget the time I was held up in an alley after work by a man with a strange scar over his throat. He had 5 o'clock shadow and a revolver. I handed over my wallet and he took off like a bat out of hell toward the old neon Hotel Depot sign. I called the cops with his description and continued walking in the opposite direction toward my apartment, bummed out of my mind. When I got home, I found my wallet sitting on the doorstep, all contents fully intact, with a 1901 Morgan silver dollar stuffed into the billfold. An elaborate prank by a friend, face hidden by makeup in the darkness of the alley? Probably. The guy was even short and scrawny like my drinking buddy Sean, who happened to be a line chef at the Macmillan at the time, but he denies it. I still have that silver dollar. As I mentioned earlier, the railway cuts right through Flag's historic downtown district where the tours take place. The rail station itself is a regular stop on our tour, something about the legend of a ghostly brakeman who died caught in a coupling between 2 cars. I've never seen him, but the actor who sometimes plays him, we're all going to hell, I know, claims he did. Jerry is an old man. I like Jerry, but like too many low-wage workers I know, he's a bit of a drinker. One Saturday night, Jerry admitted to me he had had a few too many during his short break between his day job at Biff's Bagels and the start of his tour shift. He slipped into his dime store conductor outfit and white grease paint and stumbled to his usual post, standing eerily in the shadows of the train station parking lot. People didn't always see Jerry standing there, but when they did, it was an effective scare, especially when his drink made him sway eerily in place. Jerry says that on this particular night he was standing where he always stood, under the shadow of the main entrance to the Amtrak station, when he heard, as he does nearly every night, the sound of the train alarm and the thunder of an approaching freight load. He glanced over and, in his own words, seen a guy in a get-up like mine clutching his stomach like he was gonna puke. Instantly sober, Jerry realized that the man was standing on the track, and he almost called out, but it was too late. He covered his eyes to avoid seeing the carnage. But there was no blare of train horns, no sickening thud, just the deafening rumble of the passing train. When your body is on adrenaline, any other high temporarily fades, and what you see is sometimes burned into your mind like a photograph. What Jerry remembers most, what drives him to drink more since the incident and not less, is the image that terror etched into his mind. His last glimpse of the man on the tracks. He was facing the oncoming train, eyes shut in an expression of ecstasy, hands outstretched, caked brown with dry blood. Laughing. The favorite part of our tour for both young and old alike is the haunted Hotel Monte Vista. The building is 4 stories of beautiful old stonework with a vintage neon sign to boot. The hotel has all your standard ghost tropes, from a rocking chair that rocks itself to a ghostly bellboy who first offered room service to John Wayne himself. Our tour doesn't take us to the supposedly haunted rooms unless they happen to be unoccupied by the living, for obvious reasons. But it does, on the adults-only version of the tour, take us to the cocktail lounge. I remember one time I was sitting at the bar, chatting up Eric the bartender, enjoying the free cocktail I'd earned by bringing him more than a dozen ghost-hunting retirees and thirsty hipsters. This was a late-night, multi-hour ghost tour, the kind we make bank on around Halloween, and we were scheduled to stay at the bar for half an hour. Again, I was surrounded by people who were all either very young or very old. All around me were people drinking in all sorts of ridiculous get-ups. There were couples too young to remember Woodstock, but who dressed as if they did. There were retirees, both coupled up and single, wearing mostly the loosest, most obscenely comfortable clothing imaginable. On my right were 3 young men dressed unironically like it was 1972. No joke, one of them was real tall and skinny, the other 2 of average build, except one had one of those god-awful Ron Swanson mustaches people sported in those days. If it was ironic, this guy was a damn pro. At this point, Eric had wandered over to a paying customer, so I decide, out of buzzed boredom, to eavesdrop on the oddly dressed men. We just lay low for a few. Unintelligible. Tucson, get you stitched up while we're at it, says Mustache. Well, now I'm listening. I glance over and notice that Skinny is clutching his upper arm. Shit. Now I'm trying to look disinterested and trying way too hard. My palms are sweaty. 2 nervous minutes pass and I glance over again. There's clearly blood seeping out from under Skinny's hand. Mustache is eyeing me suspiciously. He knows I'm onto him. I head to the bathroom to, as they put it, lie low. What is this, Goodfellas? The ghostly rear view of the reflection on the edge of my glasses. Something my eyes don't notice 99% of the time. I swear on my mother's grave I see Skinny slump over onto the bar, and so much blood. I run to the bathroom. When I came out about 5 minutes after our half hour was up, my patrons were mostly waiting outside to continue the tour, a few of the younger ones vaping with an annoyingly casual grace. There were no cops, no bloodstains on the bar, just a knowing look from Eric the bartender. These days I tell that story as part of the tour. It's always a crowd pleaser, and there's always at least one patron that catches me casually refusing to enter the lounge at the Monte Vista all these months later. That encounter, if that's what you want to call it, traumatized me. As Eric would later inform me, it turns out there's some historical precedent to what I saw that night, but I'm not going to spell it out for you, and any idiot could Google it, unlike the Macmillan story. If you're listening to this, I don't doubt your intelligence. If I didn't make it clear in the body of the story, I'm a skeptic. I started this job as a skeptic, and I'll probably die as one. Life has managed to throw me a curveball or two, though. If you're ever traveling down historic Route 66, stop by and take a tour sometime. Even if it's not with me, you're in for a treat all the same.